Thank you. Good morning. The theme of this conference is the call, the cost, and the joy of leadership. Can you say call? Can you say cost? Can you say joy? The Old Testament scriptures can provide for us a brilliant window into what it looks like to be called by the Lord in the midst of our community. And so we're going to use the book of Isaiah over the next 2 mornings to provide one window into what it might look like to be somebody in pursuit of leadership or ministry of the kingdom of God in the midst of this world. We're going to begin with young man Isaiah in chapter 1. He lives in Jerusalem in 740 BC, which if you're a mathematician among us, you will be able to work out is a long time ago. And at that time, in Jerusalem, Israel, his nation, the chosen people of God, is in dire straits. They're corrupt. The leadership have gone off. They do whatever pleases them. The people themselves are confused. They're committed to idolatry. There's many who are pursuing their own self-interest. The poor are oppressed and ignored. And even maybe worse than all of that is the civil war, where one half of the kingdom, the northern half of the kingdom, has revolted against the southern half of the kingdom. And there's been ongoing feud and conflict between these two nations. And young man Isaiah, a leadership in training, looks at all of this and he feels anger and frustration in his heart. You could say, if you enjoyed something like hip hop, that he creates a diss track on his nation in chapter 1. He basically says, you guys are dumber than a donkey. A donkey knows its master, an ox knows its manger, but when you see your God, you think that he's a stranger. You guys are sick from your head to your socks. You're so full of sin, it's like you're infested with the pox. You know how he feels, don't you? You know, you small group leaders, you have somebody who says they're going to come to small group, you're going to do dinner, but they say, hey, by the way, I am vegan and I'm also gluten-free and I don't really like mushrooms. So if you could cook that for me, that'd be great. And you cook it for them and 5 minutes, you've had this, you know what this is like. 5 minutes before the small group starts, they send a message saying, sorry, can't make it tonight. No reason given. And you start drafting a reply. You guys are sick. I have to eat this disgusting food now. And so Isaiah, in the kind of this sense that, oh, this isn't right, I'm frustrated with this. Now, you've got to excuse my language now, because he builds up to a climax. And his climax of his kind of diss track on his nation is this. He says, you guys are like a hut in a cucumber field. Drop the mic. Like I said, be careful how you use it. Use it with restraint. Isaiah is a leader with passion, with a sense of calling, a sense of something isn't right. He has faith, but he needs to understand his purpose. He needs to understand, rather than looking at everybody else and being frustrated, what's God asking him to do? What's my purpose, God? What's my calling? What do I do in the midst of all of this? Anybody in the room in this place today? You're looking, God, would you just show me what my calling is? What do I do right now? Clarify for me your call on my life. Anybody got anyone in their churches who's looking for clarity about the purpose and meaning of their life? The likelihood is that many, many people in your church, in your small group, in your kids group, in your youth group, whatever it is you lead in, are desperately in need of clarity over the purpose and calling on their life. In 1890, a guy called Friedrich Nietzsche wrote a parable of the madman. You will know some of this. It says, whither is God, he cried. I tell you, we've killed him, you and I. And then he goes on to think through the implications of this. He says, what were we doing when we unchained the earth from its sun? Are we not now plunging continually backwards, sideways, forwards in all directions? Is there still any up or down? Are we not straying as through an infinite nothing? Do we not feel the breath of empty space? Has it not become colder? There's a sense in culture after Nietzsche that just things had got colder. We didn't really know which way's up or down anymore. We don't know where we're going. How do we find purpose for life? At the back of that, a crisis of meaning developed, which many people tried to answer. And one key voice that tried to answer this was Freud. And his answer to it out of the psychological revolution that he kind of created was that you begin to look inside yourself, get to know yourself, discover who you are deep inside, and that will show you your meaning. That will show you your purpose. That's how you find out what your calling is. And while some benefit has come from that, the reality that we're seeing in our churches today, are you not seeing this? Over 50% of people are living with chronic anxiety. An anxiety of, am I missing the point of my life? Am I actually, have I looked inside and found the right answer? Or is there still something more for me to discover? And even in our churches, the stats suggest that 44% of Christians still regularly or sometimes feel anxiety and lack of meaning in their life. So how do we, as leaders in the Vineyard movement, encourage people to find their calling? And Isaiah's book suggests to us that rather than looking inside of ourselves to discover our meaning, primarily, and even maybe the Christian answer, which is often provided, is, well, just look up to God and discover your meaning in Him. He loves you. Discover a relationship with Him, and He will provide your meaning and your calling. But sometimes, do you find this? You can have a relationship with God and you can feel like, I think He's spoken this to me. I think this is my calling. And then you go into another situation, you think, and I need to find it again. And Lord, am I doing the right thing? I need to find it again. We sometimes can find that we can have people who are continually just only looking up and thinking, God, show me my calling. And Isaiah's instruction to us, his demonstration to us, is the way that we find our calling is we place it as a subset of our theology of hope. We find our calling not by looking inside ourselves, not by looking up, but by looking forwards to the future that God has promised He will bring to creation. And we see that future, and we then, on a theology of hope, find our particular calling. And you're going to hear some brilliant teaching on how to do that tonight from James and across this conference. But all of that happens within the highway of hope that our understanding of the future that we've seen is coming provides for us. So let me just run through for us, what is our hope? What is the future that is absolutely guaranteed to come to this earth? It's God will bring it. Just turn to your neighbor and say, God's bringing a future. He's bringing a future. He's a sovereign God. He's going to bring a future. Isaiah, frustrated, angry. You guys are like a hut in a cucumber field. And in the midst of that, God breaks in with a vision. And it's like a calendar flicking. Flick, 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 flick. It flicks forward. And Isaiah chapter 2 says this, in the last days. In the last days, if you have a Bible in front of you, I would highly recommend highlighting that phrase, last days. It's a hugely important phrase, which you will discover again and again through the Old Testament scriptures. And this phrase, last days, is translated into the Greek version of the Old Testament, the Septuagint, as eschatos, from which we derive the term eschatology, which is the theology and the understanding of hope. What is God going to do on the earth? In the last days, he said, in that day, he says, God will make Himself the highest on the earth. There's a repeat phrase in chapter 2. The fearful presence of the Lord, the splendor of His majesty will arrive, and it will rise to shake the earth. Look, Isaiah's here in life. This is where he lives. And he discovers that in his vision, God wants him to see the future that is coming. Here it is, and on this day, there's a rising up of God as enthroned on the earth. He becomes the highest one. The splendor of His majesty, the glory, causes all of creation to shake. There's this enthroning of God as king over the earth. And inevitably, as God is lifted up, other false rulers will be torn down. the proud, the arrogant, those who say, I don't care what God says, I prefer my own opinion, those who place themselves in positions of power, God will tear down. He'll bring them down as he is lifted up. And the idols, it said, of the people will be thrown in that day. On this day in the future, all the idols will be thrown to the moles and the bats. Don't you love that phrase? The moles will be like, thank you. Have you ever played one of those marble games with your kids where you build like a marble run? You know, and your kid makes it, and they drop the marble in. You know those things, like multicolored stuff, plastic things, and they drop it in the top, and the marble doesn't go anywhere. And what do you say to them? Say, oh, no, it's because you've got, this second one is higher than the first one. You know what I'm talking about? And God is saying, the marble of his blessing and his grace and salvation and the goodness of life can only be poured out on the earth when he, the first one, is the highest one. He has to be raised up above every other throne, every other ruler, every other king. And chapter 6 of Isaiah develops this metaphor of high even further. God is high and lifted up, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe will fill the temple. Now you understand, I believe you already know this, the temple represented all of creation, all the parts in it, the sea, the bowl of it, it represented the oceans and the pomegranates on the curtains. They all represent creation, and the picture of the trees, it represents creation. And so when the train of God's robe fills the temple, it means what? It means he's going to fill and be ruler over all of creation. He's claiming it all. It's a statement of intent. God wants his whim to be every nation's thing. That's what he wants. He will rule it all. And we see in this day, Isaiah sees in this day, Isaiah's been looking around at his nation and saying, you guys are sick. Yeah, I'm better than you. You're all right, you worship idols. At least I want to worship the Lord. And suddenly he sees this day, and on this day, there's seraphim with 3 sets of wings. And with the first set of wings, all they're trying to do is fly as close as they possibly can to God on his throne. They're just trying to fly as close as they want to be close to him. But the second set of wings, they have to cover their feet because they know they're not worthy to be next to him. They're covering their feet. I want to be near you, God, but I'm not worthy to be near you. And with their third set of wings, they're covering their eyes because I so much want to be near you. I want to be near you, but you're so high and lifted up. If I even saw you as you really are, I think I'd explode. I really genuinely think a being like me could not truly see all of God. I just couldn't. So I have to cover my eyes just to protect myself. And Isaiah suddenly in this moment realizes, I thought I could judge myself by my contemporaries, by the people around me. I thought I could go to my small group and think, well, I attend more regularly than these guys. I sing louder than these guys. I read my Bible more than these guys. I even give more money away. I'm more generous to the poor. And suddenly he discovers, oh my word, there's a whole new community of people who operate in this coming kingdom. And compared to them, I'm the one who's sick. Compared to them, I'm like a hut in a cucumber field, and he falls on his knees. Woe is me, God. Woe is me. And these seraphim, they cry, holy, holy, holy. Have you ever wondered when you're singing holy, like a worship song, you ever wondered like, why is this good news? Why am I celebrating that God's holy? Well, holy means this whole. It means he's never corruptible. He can never be tricked. He can never be outwitted. He can never be manipulated. He understands anything anybody's ever going to bring to him. It means he always knows what's the right thing to do. It means he never lets himself down. He never makes a mistake. He never gets anything wrong. And they're saying, we're so grateful. You are so stable. Your rule is so wonderful. Holy, holy, holy. And he sees that in that kingdom that's coming, the compulsion on every inhabitant is to continually, involuntarily declare how great the king is. Now, these visions are the most definitive of the coming kingdom that we have, aren't they? We know these. We know these visions of the coming kingdom. They provide for us an understanding that our future is total surrender. And preparation for that future must be obedience. Our joy is obedience. That it provides us with that understanding that humility is essential. It helps us understand that when we gather for worship every time on a Sunday, it's not just for our benefit. What we're doing is we're forming ourselves into the people we will be, we have to be, we must be in the kingdom to come. It's not a small thing. It's not like, oh, I can't make it today. My kid's been invited to a birthday party. That's who we are as our future. The future is a throwing down of idols to do whatever he says. His whim becomes our thing. And we all know, don't we, what a joy it is when you have somebody in your sphere of influence who says to us, I've seen Jesus and I just want to do whatever he says for the rest of my life. Don't we know the joy of that? Don't we know? You have said this. I believe wholeheartedly you have said this in your life. Jesus, I'll do anything. And I want to say that is the absolute bedrock of all understanding of calling. Absolutely. But what can happen when we have only this understanding is that what we can do is we can then think, well, what does he want me to do? I mean, we have people over and over again coming to us in our church saying, well, you know, I'm going through this situation and I just need the Lord to tell me what to do. What should he tell me to do? And there's this constant need to, will you show me what to do? And there's a good thing in that. But what Isaiah provides for us is a broader vision of the coming kingdom than just one picture. It isn't just a throne room that he shows Isaiah. There's other visions of the future that Isaiah receives, because in chapter 2, he sees that in this coming future, the nations are going to be fighting, and in the middle of their fighting, they're going to stop. They're going to pick up a stone and start bending their sword and making it into something to plow the ground. They look at each other. Hey, let's make some food. In Isaiah chapter 4, there's a vision of the future where God spreads out like a canopy, like a covering, like over the people, so protect them from shade, from the sun, provide shade and shelter. In Isaiah chapter 11, there's a vision of animals, multiple animals, all like becoming friends. He says the wolf, he like sees a picture of the wolf going in through a front door, and a lamb going in as well. And they're like, hey, it's so nice living together, isn't it? We become friends. Now, you understand, this is like a real wolf and a real lamb. This is the vision of the future. And there's then a leopard and a goat. The vision of the future is that creation itself is made whole and has shalom, peace, come into it with all the animals around. So putting those things together, you could see that there's a throne of God where Jesus, we do whatever you want, we do whatever you want, we do whatever you want. And Jesus is saying, well, what I want is for the animals and all of creation to be made a place of peace. And even in chapter 55, the mountains start singing. We don't get many mountains in Croydon. Anybody got mountains near where they live? What do you call them in Scotland? Munros? Yeah? You got some of them. Have you ever walked on one of them and thought, I wonder what voice this would sing with on the day when the king comes and is enthroned? And as they raise their melody, the trees start to clap their hands, their branches together. And so the animals and the mountains and the trees, and suddenly there's a vision for us of the future kingdom, which is far more embodied, far more on this earth, far more an understanding that where we live right now is a place made by God, loved by God. He wants to rule over this. He wants to redeem this heavens and this earth. And in the end of the book, he realizes, oh, God's going to make a new heavens and a new earth. The hope we have is not that somehow we'll be, disappear off. The hope is that the kingdom of heaven right now will come down and bring peace and shalom and renewal to this earth. And as part of that vision, which becomes really, the primary vision for the New Testament believers of what will happen, is chapter 25 of a banquet. The singing mountain has upon it a rich feast of food, the greatest food, and the finest wine. I've heard a rumor that it's a bit like White Bird Cafe, but where everything's free and there is no queue. Now, our job as leaders is to help the people we lead imagine the future, see that kind of future. And in addition to this idea that creation itself will be redeemed, is that God will bring in all the nations. Chapter 2, vision. Nations will stream to the mountain and say, teach us your ways. Chapter 19, as he's just spoken about the Egyptians, they deny God, they're opposing God. God's going to have to bring rebuke upon them. And at the end of chapter 19, he says, you Egyptians are my people. You Assyrians, a great threat. Huge, they worship all kinds of other gods, but in the future, God's going to say, you Assyrians are my handiwork. You, Egypt and Israel, you're three. You're all mine. And in the end of the book, chapter 66, it says this, in that day in the future, Turkey, Libya, Russia, Georgia, and Greece will all come in. And it will be said of them, they are now priests of the living God. Little aside, most theologians think that's how Paul decided his routes for his missionary journeys. Isaiah chapter 66. Now, Isaiah's vision of hope becomes central and the bedrock, the road upon which he works out his vision of his calling. You will know very well what happens in Isaiah chapter 6. He sees the throne room, doesn't he? And he falls on his knees, and what does he say? Anybody read the Bible in this room? Have you got one of these? This is quite a helpful textbook. What does he say? He says, what? Woe is? And then he says, here am I, what? Said, come on, here am I. Do you know that he then repeats just a couple of chapters later, he says, here am I, send me, and then God gives him his sending instructions, and then in chapter 8, he repeats, here am I again. Did you know that? But he doesn't say send me anymore. It's no longer like a blank piece of paper. He now says, here am I. He doesn't say send me. What he says, chapter 8, verse 18, here am I, and the children the Lord has given me. We are signs and symbols in Israel from the Lord Almighty. What's he done? He's taken his blank page of, I'll do anything you want. You're the king. I'll just surrender. I'll be in total humility to you. He's taken that blank page, whatever you want, and he's realized, there's a road that God has already mapped out for anybody on their calling, and the road is to become a sign and a symbol of the living God in your generation. of the future that he's making, you'll become a signpost towards it, a symbol of it in your generation right now. That's the road that you're walking. And in that road, you'll discover what is the lane, what is the exact way that I find my calling to be a sign and a symbol to that coming future. Just turn to the person next to you and say, let's be a sign. Let's be a sign. Whatever else we find out in our calling, whatever else we hear, we are going to be a sign of that future. And so Isaiah plants Vineyard Jerusalem. Him and his kids. Anybody done this? Church plant, it's just you and your kids. Good luck, guys. And they try and demonstrate and proclaim the truths of this coming future in Jerusalem. And it's interesting, he says, I and my kids are signs and symbols. Isaiah means God is salvation. Can you say God is salvation? Which means this, God must be seen and recognized as the highest one, as the source of salvation. As I am a Vineyard church plant, as I am a sign and a symbol, the number one thing that matters most in my community is that God is highest. That's the foundation. We've talked about that, haven't we? He has to be the highest. It has to be him who makes the call. He's the governor. He's the senior pastor. He's the chief trustee. He's the what? He has to be the highest. They prophesy about it to the people. Chapter 9. A light will dawn in the darkness. People will suddenly realize God has to be the highest. They preach into it. Chapter 42. Come on, we've got to be a light to the nations. That blind eyes would be opened. They'd stop trusting in idols and they'd make God their highest. They preach about it again in chapter 52. Come on, wake up, wake up, wake up. Hear the good news. See, God has to be the highest. When he's the highest, the marble runs down. The blessing and the goodness of God comes into the earth. Some of the finest declarations of hope, some of the most powerful denunciations of idolatry, on and on and on and on and on for 66 chapters. Have you read them? He says it a lot of times, doesn't he? Trust him, wait for him, make him the highest. But he has some sons. His first son is called Maher Shalal Hashbaz. Can you say that? Maher Shalal Hashbaz. It's the longest name in the Bible. Trivia quiz if you want to know. It means the plunder is coming soon. God will plunder his enemies. Nothing can stop God becoming king. Others will stand up and say, we're going to be king, we're going to run, we're going to have our way. And God says, well, maybe for a little bit, but not for long. We're going to look at that tomorrow. His second son is called Shear Jeshub. Can you say that? Come on, with gusto. Shear Jeshub. It means a remnant will return. What it means is this: God will bring down unfaithful witnesses. He will not have, in the long run, people who claim to be signs and symbols of him, but who have a highest thing in their life of another thing other than him. He will not. He will bring down those who claim to know him, but his whim is not their thing. He'll bring them down. And he will raise up those who will truly be signs and symbols of the kingdom that is to come. A remnant will return. The road to this future plan that God has for the earth must see faithful witnesses. There must be signs and symbols. Otherwise, all the kingdoms can't come in, all the nations can't hear, God's plan can't occur. The road has a stop on it. The stop has to be signs and symbols who are truly faithful to God in order to get to the destination. Now, the only narrative example we have of Isaiah's preaching, the only time we see what it actually looks like for him to be a sign and a symbol, is in Isaiah chapter 20. Isaiah chapter 20, when this is the only example we have of Isaiah actually preaching. And God says to Isaiah, Isaiah, strip your pants. And Isaiah goes to his kids and his little church plant and he says, hey guys, I had a dream last night. I feel like the Lord's speaking to us about humility. I think it's really important that we, let's press into humility. Let's do a preaching series on humility and let's just make sure we really pray for humility. And he's really pleased with himself and he goes back and he has another dream the next night and God says to him, no. strip to your pants. And he goes back to the church and he says to the church, hey, guys, I had another dream. And I realized it wasn't just we have to do stuff, preach about it and teach about it. No, I think you guys actually we need to think about this. How are we actually going to go out and show other people this? You get what I'm saying, don't you? The third time, God says, no, Isaiah, you strip to your pants, go walk about on the streets and preach for 3 years. What he's doing in that moment is embodying humility that Jesus actually is king. His whim is my thing. And he's showing the people, actually, there's a future day coming. If you don't now yield yourself to God being your highest, your future is going to look like me. You see, we see over and over again this thing that revelation of the consummation is activation for incarnation. Revelation of the consummation, the heavenly nation where God is boss, revelation of that is always activation for incarnation, to become an invitation to the people. Now, let me ask you a question. Can you imagine people actually doing this today? French philosopher Jean-François Lyotard says the postmodern condition is an incredulity towards meta-narratives. We've removed the idea of story from our lives. Most people, even when they're Christians, think, I'm just going to live in the moment. The way that I really do well in life is I live in the moment. I'm just going to live in the moment. And a misunderstanding of what John Mark Comer and a lot of the spiritual formation movement is that what really, really matters is for me to live in the moment. There's a misunderstanding. Because what God wants for his people is not to live in the moment, but to live in this moment with an eye on that moment. That's what's most important. And it took me a while to convince me, what does this really mean in life? Until I have 4 boys. And my 3 eldest boys are now all bigger than me. And I have a little fantasy that when I walk along the road with them, people think, about me, that guy must be a celebrity because he's got 3 bouncers with him. That's my fantasy. And my 3 eldest boys, they go gym. Now, my wife goes to the gym, but my boys go gym. Anybody else here, you go gym? They lift the weights. Ooh, and they come home quite regularly like, oh, I can't get up the stairs. And they're laughing to each other. I can't get up the stairs. What have you been doing? What's wrong with you? Oh, yeah, we did like 42 kg. Now, I have a 4th son, the youngest son. Now, bless him, he's younger. And he looks like a twig. There's no 2 ways about it. He's scrawny. And I came into his room one day, and he'd got one of his brother's weights, and he was like, and he's bent, arms, elbows were bending all over. I was like, what are you doing? Stop, what are you doing? You're going to hurt yourself. And he said, Dad, I'm getting wham. Now, getting wham means I'm becoming like really muscly. Dad, I'm getting wham. And I said, you're going to hurt yourself. What are you doing? Don't be careful. And he looked me right in the eyes. And he said this to me, Dad, you got to trust the process. Now that night, we had a small group on. And before the small group, I got message after message of people saying, I've had a hard week. I've got an interview tomorrow at work. I'm not going to come. And I thought to myself, how is it that my puny, scrawny little 10-year-old kid can understand that he has to trust the process? He embraces pain and discomfort in his life in order to get where he wants to get to. And I've got a whole church full of disciples who have no concept that putting themselves out, a little bit of discomfort, something that's slightly awkward, is what they need to do in order to get where they want to get. Because there's an incredulity towards meta-narrative. We think I have to just live in this moment, but we don't realize my moment has to be in view of that moment. And my youngest son sees every single day signs and symbols of the promised land. He sees these big boys. And he thinks, I want that. And I know how to get there. It's this. That's the calling on leadership in the church. You become such a sign and symbol of the coming kingdom that the people around you think, I want that, and I see the process of how to get there. Worship leaders, when you lead worship, press into any song that elevates, lifts up God as highest. And you know what a brilliant new song, like The Joy of Obedience. Do you know what that is? We're singing into ourselves a vision of the process it takes to get to the place of God being our highest. Small group leaders. If you lead a small group, it's really, really important that you are transparent about the process of your life, about how you're learning and becoming somebody who has God as your highest. It's really important to be transparent about the challenges and the trials and the methodology. What are you doing? Where's the pain that you're going through in order to become one who lifts God as the highest, or sees the nations come in, or sees peace, life, salvation come in? Black gospel preachers are brilliant at this. And I would suggest to our Vineyard movement, if you are a preacher, let's learn from the community of people who've been unbelievably brilliant at demonstrating the story of God, the future of God, and the process and methodology of how to get there. Charles Albert Tindley. He grew up, born in 1851. His parents were both slaves. His mother, he was in North America, Philadelphia. His mother died when he was 4, and when he was 5, his dad was taken away to be a slave of somebody else, raised by random adults. They took him along to Bainbridge Street Methodist Church. And in that church, he began to hear a story about a God who wasn't the God that the slave owners told him was, but was a God on a story who was taking slaves into freedom, who was going to bring shalom and peace to all nations, even the black people, not just the white people. And he began to discover there's a story that we're living in, but I want to know more about this story, and I can't find it out. And he couldn't read or write, so he began to collect newspapers off the streets. And at night, after he'd done his labor, he was a child laborer, he'd take the newspaper in front of the firelight, he'd teach himself to read from the newspapers that other people had thrown away. He discovered as he began to read, he read the translations of the scriptures, he goes, but I want to know, this hasn't just been changed by the white man, I need to understand what this really looks like. And he sent off for a distance learning in Greek and then in Hebrew. He became fluent in Greek and Hebrew. He became the pastor of his church. And he lived as a person, as a sign and symbol of the story of the future hope that his people could hook themselves into, and of the process it would require to become somebody who enjoyed that day in the future. They said of him, so he did this with his gospel music. They believe he was probably the first person, or at least he's credited as one of the grandfathers of all gospel music that we have today. That he began to teach his people very simple songs. I Shall Overcome One Day is his most famous. He used imagery in his preaching to act out the parts of the biblical characters because his congregation couldn't read or write. They hadn't been taught. He acted it out. He became an embodiment of the future, a sign and a symbol. Now, at the end of in chapter 7 of Isaiah, we discover there's a problem in his day of people being the signs and the symbols of God. King Ahaz is the king. He has taken on himself the name of, I'm leader of God's people. I am the chief, people would think, the chief representative of the sign and the symbol of the coming kingdom, because I'm the king who God's appointed. Therefore, if you look at my rule, it should demonstrate the future rule of God. Leaders, think about this. Now, Ahaz is met by Isaiah outside Jerusalem at the launderer's pool by the end of the aqueduct. There's a smell of soap and women are scrubbing in the background. And Ahaz is scared. He's heard his 2 closest neighbors are planning to invade, and the phraseology is he was shaking with fear like trees in a storm. And Isaiah says to him 3 phrases, be careful, be careful, be careful right now. Love the people, pull down idols. Keep calm. Just keep on doing faithfulness right now. And don't be afraid, because God will not let anything stop his future coming if we simply trust him. Just trust him. Just trust him. But he can see from Ahaz's face that Ahaz does not believe him. So he says, look, ask God for a sign. Isaiah knows a lot about signs. Okay, if I'm not a good enough sign for you, Ahaz, ask God for a sign direct. And Ahaz says this, he says, I could not pay. He quotes Deuteronomy. Do you notice how often people will quote the Bible in order to prevent God from really coming into their lives and challenging them? He quotes Deuteronomy. He says, I could never put the Lord God to the test. And Isaiah looks at him and he realizes this is the problem of human sin. This is the problem of people having to be the sign and symbol that God needs. Because we use things to protect ourselves, prevent ourselves from having God really come and change the most foundational parts of ourselves. He looks at Ahaz and says, you're a test of human patience, and now you're testing the patience of God as well. God will give you a sign. He's going to cause a virgin to give birth to one called Emmanuel, and through this Emmanuel, God will raise up true signs and symbols of him who truly see God, who truly represent God as a sign and symbol of the land. And through that son, the salvation plan of God will progress, but not through you. If you carry on like this, he's going to tear you down if you carry on this way. The final prayer of Isaiah is, oh God, would you please, old man by now, chapter 64, please rend the heavens, come down, make your name known. You come to the hope of those who gladly do right, who remember your ways, but we continue to sin against them, and you're angry. How can we ever get to that future? How can we be saved? All of us have become like one who is unclean. Our righteous acts are like filthy rags. 770 years later, there's an old man on a beach. And he's praying, and as he's praying, he sees a vision of the future. He sees a vision of the throne room, of the future kingdom. He sees this day in his prayer. He sees it so vivid. And in his trip to that day, he hears a voice of one ask a question to him. Who is worthy to take hold of my scroll? Now he knows, he's read Daniel, he understands scroll is a symbol for history. Who is worthy to take hold of my plan for human history to become a sign and a symbol of me so that the witness could go to the nations? Who could be the one who fulfills the desire for a remnant? Who could be the people who are actually truly signs and symbols of me in the land? And this old man, John the Apostle, weeps. He weeps and weeps and weeps because he thinks, I've given my life to this. My whole calling was about this. Everything I've done has been to try and make these people. And James, my brother, he was with me and he's dead. They killed him. They cut off his head. And Peter, our leader, he was such a brilliant leader. He was leading us. He was meant to be raising us up. He was meant to be leading us. And they killed him. They crucified him upside down. And Ananias and Sapphira, we raised them up into leadership. We started to trust them and put them up in front of the people. And they lied to God and they lied to the church and they failed. And since then, there's been false teacher after false teacher come into the church and lure them away that they wouldn't have God as the highest. They wouldn't be signs and symbols in the land. And Caesar, the Romans, are ravaging the church. Has my whole life been wasted? I thought I was living for purpose. I thought I was doing what you call me to do, God, and I think it's failed. And then somebody who was there, not there in Isaiah's vision, but is there in this vision, an elder, a human being is now inhabiting that kingdom. One of the elders taps him on the shoulder, says, hey, don't cry. I like to think maybe that elder is Isaiah. Taps him on the shoulder. Don't weep. Emmanuel has come. The sign and symbol of the coming kingdom was never a human being. It was the one on the throne. He got off the throne. He walked back into human history. He gave himself as a lamb to die, to forgive the sins. That's how you can be saved. Through his atoning death. And he now, look all around me. And he looks John suddenly takes his eyes off his own weeping and he looks, and there's humans all over the place in this future kingdom. There's people from all the nations, from Russia, from Georgia, from Greece, from Turkey, from Libya. And they're all saying, he's done it. He's done it. It was all worth it. Every act of obedience, every walking along the road, all trying to live the purpose, all trying to become the calling. I was killed when I did it. It didn't feel like I saw any fruit when I did it, but now I see. He wove it all together to bring salvation to all the earth. And that elder wrote one of the most confusing books you've ever seen in your life, but his central point of it was this: never, never, never doubt. Never doubt, church. If you're being persecuted, if you feel there's no fruit that you can see, never doubt any effort you have made in your life to honor Emmanuel, to be a sign and a symbol to him. Never doubt that in the end, you will notice it's borne fruit. It has been used by him to bring a nation, the nations, before the throne. Never doubt it. So shall we pray? I've got more to say, but it's time over. Let's stand.